Good afternoon. I see everyone is signing in or logging in. This is great. We're going to have a great topic this afternoon. Of course, my co host will be signing on shortly. I guess she had too good of a time last week on her birthday. So we'll see what happens with her tonight. I hope everyone is doing well. We'll get started with our session in a few moments. While we're waiting, I would like to say that I have some very exciting things planned for you all for the month of April. And as others are signing on, I just want to share with you all that I'm actually considering doing a summit, and it's called Our Children Are Our Priority Summit. It will be on a Saturday for 3 hours, I think. We're talking about going maybe from 9 until noon. There will be a fee for that though, and we're looking at the fee of $35. You'll get more information as the time goes on. But we're looking at about having that summit on on April 10th. But we'll be forwarding information out via our live streams, via email. If you'd like to start getting our emails, which are packed full of information, folk, I would advise you to send us your email address, and I'll be more than happy to have our marketer add you on our email list. You'll get those emails every week. It has not only the upcoming events that we're hosting, but it will also have other information regarding things that are happening in your community. And in your community, AmeriGroup does a great job with community events. And oftentimes we actually announce AmeriGroup's community events so you can make sure that you tell your local folk about it. For instance, they partner with communities to issue diapers for babies and formula and all kinds of things. So the emails will be quite helpful for you. I'd like to say also that I want to thank one of my board members who's actually funding these live streams for the month of March. His name is Eric Johnson. Eric is actually sponsoring these. So I want to give a shout out to our board member who is actually sponsoring this event for us for the month of March. I'm trying to get all the announcements out of the way. We're also still inviting you, if you have some extra bucks, just make a donation to us. We are a not-for-profit organization, tax deductible. And so you would benefit from actually donating to us, not only benefit from our live streams, but benefit from planting a seed with us. We're always anxious to receive those kinds of gifts, and we love to receive them so we can do more work throughout the community. Our community is a worldwide community. So it's not just Georgia. We're talking about worldwide. You were doing some great things in the state of Georgia, of course, in Florida. We're in Alabama. And I have friends in Sierra Leone, Africa, who actually tune in, but they can't stay a long time because the data costs so much over there. So I'm just very excited about you making donations to us and doing great things with us. Just a few more announcements and we'll be finished. We'll get into our session. Oh, by the way, folks, we have two more. No, we only have one more. Hey, Jackie, how are you? Great. Thanks for
Wonderful.
being
Good evening,
Thanks
Dr.
for being
Miles. Good
on.
evening, everyone. Of course.
Okay, great. We have two more. Well, I said two more, but it's one more. We have tonight's event, which is hyperactivity. And you're going to find that some of this information you've gotten before because we talked about ADHD, and hyperactivity sort of is a partner of that. But on next week, we'll deal with post-traumatic stress disorders. And many of you are saying, you're saying, how in the world can a child have PTSD? Well, I ask myself sometimes, how can adults have it? But they do. And so it's important that you are aware of some of the symptoms and things that are happening. After next week's live stream, folk, we're going on a break for 1 week, not a spring break, just a mental health break. Yeah. So we're going to come back to you, I think it's on April the 6th, which is a Tuesday. So we'll keep you all abreast of that and make sure you're aware that after next week will be our last live stream for this series. And this series is a mental health series. I have some foster parents who are asking me, how can they claim credit? Very simple. Send me an email. I think I shared this with you before. Make sure you take a screenshot of the live stream that you were in. We will send you a letter that says, hey, you were there for these hours. And if anyone wants to contact us, they can to verify it. So again, you're going to simply do a you're going to do a screenshot of the sessions you were in. You're going to send those screenshots to me. That's the only way I can verify it. It'd be great if you do the screenshot with your name showing, but if not going to worry about it. All right. So at that point, we're going to make sure that you get the credits you need. And in the month of April, we're going to have a Children Are Our Priority Summit on a Saturday morning. All right. So tell your friends about it. And if there's anything in particular you'd like for us to specialize in for that morning, let us know. We're going to have 3 breakout groups, but we'll get you more information on that. So you have plenty of time to register for it. All right. Are you all ready for another great evening of talking about our children and finding out about what they're doing? Jackie, I told them you had a birthday, and I told them maybe you had not stopped celebrating. The reason you're not on. So
I haven't stopped celebrating. I'll be celebrating the entire month of March.
Wow.
Yes, I did. I missed you all last week, and I'm very excited to be back.
Hey, that is excellent. If you don't celebrate yourself, no one else will. So do it while you're living, because everybody wants to celebrate you once you're dead, and you can't enjoy that. Well, if you're going to heaven, you can enjoy it. But the whole point, I don't know about all that. So
enjoy it with them.
At this point, I do want to welcome folk on. And you guys are probably tired of hearing me talk, but I'm Dr. Willie Miles. I'm the president of Dr. Willie Miles Children's Foundation. And Jackie and I started talking so much, we forget to talk about who we are. And of course, Jackie is the faithful person who works with me every week to make sure these things take place. We really hope that you are receiving something from these live streams. I'll share with you, not that it's any of your business, but we don't get paid for this. We do it because we care. And we do it because children really are a priority. Jackie, you have any comments?
Actually, Dr. Miles, yes. I'd like to just kind of second what you said, because they're not always privy to our conversation. So offline, we receive comments and feedback about how this is really impacting families and children and professionals. And so we do this out of a labor of love. And we would just love to expand what we're doing.
All right. Okay. So let's get in on
hyperactivity.
The topic for tonight.
Yes. So, Dr. Miles, tonight we're talking about hyperactivity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can we start with a definition? What is
Well, it's kind of interesting. I think for parents who have children who are hyperactivity, they probably give me the definition better than I can. But we know that hyperactivity is just really an overflow of activity. I'm using the word overflow of activity that children exhibit. And usually it's nonstop. And you know that it is either in activity, it's with talking, it's excessive fidgeting. In other words, they just can't stop moving. They just can't stop moving. And the movement doesn't have to be, like running around. It could be, twitching their fingers and always tapping something. That's how you can tell when the child has, activity. If he's always patting his feet, if he's always moving, he's always looking around, he's always fidgeting, that means that there's some activity there, because he or she should be able to, sit for periods of time without actually moving parts of their body.
Well, I just learned something, because I didn't think about the less mobile movement. I really only thought about the being up and moving around.
Yeah.
Dr. Miles, is this an official diagnosis and designated condition?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question. The answer is that it is, but you're going to find that usually hyperactivity, Jack, is partnered with something. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't stand alone. It is partnered with something. For instance, and it's sort of like, we look at this, if a child's hyperactive, right? Does that mean he can sit and focus?
Gotcha.
No. So the diagnosis is going to be ADD, right? It's going to be attention deficit
disorder.
Hyperactivity. Yeah. So you're going to find that hyperactivity usually doesn't stand alone, but it can. Okay. It can. But usually it's going to have a partner with it. It's going to have a partner with it. All right. But again, you mentioned before, or I mentioned to you, that it really simply means the child has constant movement, Jackie. And the other thing you mentioned about being mobile, running around, it could be, I did some work with babies and how many times babies blink while they're asleep to determine whether or not there'll be some developmental disabilities.
Wow.
So the hyperactivity is not just, just like walking around, running around, screaming, and so forth. It is really any involuntary movement of body parts.
It's ongoing.
Yes.
And this is just, again, information based on what you're saying. Another question. A while back we had those little widgets, those little spin things.
Yes.
That they were giving to kids, just everywhere. Right. Is that related to hyperactivity?
It's amazing. They were kid things. They call spinners. Well, guess what? We use it as a therapeutic tool. When a child has hyperactivity, we recommend the parents buy him a spinner.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I
And
know they were everywhere. Again, as an educator, we did see that. So, and thank you for answering those questions. Tell us a little bit about the prevalence and the history, Dr. Miles. Is it common? Is it rare?
well, Jackie, it's so interesting about, any of these disorders because they all have to deal with a malfunctioning of the neurotransmitters in the brain. That means something is not connecting or something is sparking and it should not be sparking. Are you with me? So the key is that when we talk about normality, you asked me a question, I'm gonna sort of like answer it a little bit, I'm gonna ask a question. It's kind of amazing that the number of children who have this diagnosis is very high in the United States, about 6.4 million. If you recall last week's conversation, that number was about the same for children who have ADHD, because usually the hyperactivity again is what? Partnered with another diagnosis.
Okay.
Is it common? The answer is yes. But the thing I find so interesting, Jackie, it's not that it's just common. When you start taking a look at like who gets it, and you begin to ask yourself, do these things, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, do these things impact a child having that diagnosis?
Okay.
I also want to share that, in our previous conversations, I mentioned that the same diagnosis that children get, ready? Adults can have them also. There is adult ADHD and hyperactivity, and really it's the same kind of symptoms.
Wow. You know what? I would bet that if we would, kind of accept this information more, then maybe more adults could get help and strategies for it, but aren't aware that that's actually what's going on.
Jackie, I saw this, and I was going to send it to you. Maybe our audience has seen it. Hey, Faithful Father, and also McQueen, and all of y'all who are in the class every week. And what Jackie and I started doing, we talk so much, right? But we're going to start saying hi to y'all before we start talking, let you know that we see you there, and we really appreciate y'all coming in. So, Jackie, let's start doing that, and we can do it at any time, all right?
Do that. I agree.
Now what was I say? I'm old. What was I talking about?
We were talking about how it could help adults if we would acknowledge that they can also have it, and then maybe it can help with some behaviors that could be affecting job, could be affecting parenting, but it's undiagnosed.
Yeah, Jackie, what I saw today, and I was going to share with y'all that I was going to send this to you, and it was like a little announcement that said, I wish that people would start treating counselors and therapists the same way they go to the doctor to get treatments for colds. And so it's not an anomaly. I mean, it's part of life.
Right.
And we have so many people who, there's so many stereotypes and so many fears. But when we start seeing it being a part of just like anything else, when we're not feeling well, what do?
We go
to the doctor. When our mind ain't feeling well, we start drinking and smoking weed, all kind of stuff.
This is true. Mental health, I think, is still not widely received as health. So.
Yeah. And it's also viewed, Jackie, different by cultures. And of course, with many cultures, is seen as taboo, and it's seen as a not believing God. And I won't go into that at all tonight about religion. Trust me, I don't get into that. But I'm saying this is how some people view it, and they just suffer because suffering is, I guess, good. I don't know.
Yeah, if I had to wish for one single outcome from all of our sessions, it's that people begin to be aware of and embrace our mental health, to your point, the same way we embrace our physical health for adults and children and everyone.
I agree totally.
With that being said, is there an average age around which this shows up? I know you mentioned that, there's a way to assess babies, but there's like an average age or typical age where parents can start to, pay attention or diagnose?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, Jackie. That is that there is an age range, and it's kind of interesting when I give you these age range, the severity of it is also at the same level. And what's interesting, and that's why we have to be very careful as clinicians and those who work in mental health, you can start diagnosing a child at age 5 with this. Oh. And usually the child at age 5 is diagnosed as severe. Now, why do you think a child age 5 is diagnosed as severe? Okay.
Right, when they're so young.
I'll answer it for you. Because what happens is that we start looking at how the child handles himself developmentally. He or she's going to be active anyway. So the diagnosis looks more severe when they're younger.
Okay.
And
So,
so,
so it's not
go on.
necessarily true. It's just how it comes across because it's they're active at that age.
And that's why most of the cases are diagnosed as severe, because you see a doubling of the activity, not
Uh-huh.
just the diagnostic part, but you see, oh, he's 4 or 5 years old. And that's why I always say, let's be careful with these diagnoses. Let's consider the child's developmental benchmarks and what he or she should be doing anyway, and then let's subtract that from what the
Right.
diagnosis is.
Right.
Unfortunately, Jackie, that doesn't happen as often as I would think it would. Now, I want to say at age 7, children are diagnosed with ADHD or hyperactivity. It's usually the kid is diagnosed with a moderate.
Oh, wow.
With moderate. And of
Got me.
course, at age 8, it's not moderate, it's average. And what you look at it is that it's developmental.
Right.
The older the child gets, the less those
Less
behaviors
they're
become.
just right.
Exactly.
Right. Because I was going to say, it sounds like what you're saying is that the measurement is based on a child even as early as 4 or 5 supposedly being still. So
Right.
any activity is counted towards the condition.
Yeah, can I go further into this, not only with the age, but it's kind of interesting, the children that receive this diagnosis. And there are 2 sort of environmental factors, which are kind of like real interesting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And ready for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Children who are in English-speaking families are diagnosed at a higher rate than children in non-English speaking families. And the other part is that children who are coming from low socioeconomic families are diagnosed at 3 times the level.
Wow.
So the question we have to ask ourselves as educators and as clinicians is, what are those environmental factors, and how can we get rid of those environmental factors?
And Dr. Miles, you would know this just based on what you're saying. Are there, when the diagnosis is made or the observation is made, is there a checklist? Is there something that would say, okay, he's this age, so a certain amount of movement is expected? And like, is there anything to guide clinicians, or is it really that they need to know?
This is just Dr. Willie Miles' view on this, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And even though not just licensed people, Jackie, but also people who are clinicians, who are the ones who work with the children, they've had courses in child development, right?
Okay, yes.
But I just don't think it's a piece they use often. For instance, we see a child, it's okay, well, he or she is age 6. We're gonna do some play therapy with them. Okay. Let's talk about this some more. Like, what kind of play therapy? Like, what are you gonna do with them? And is it just because he's that age? Or do you want to do some assessment that says, oh, chronologically, this child is 6,
Right.
but developmental,
Right.
he's 3, that
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
But I don't think we do that enough.
Okay. So basically some more training is needed for our professionals, perhaps.
Well, yeah, in our profession, we're always getting training. And the issue is, if I would like, and of course, I'm a developmentalist, so I look at everybody developmentally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first thing I look at. So in my world, I would love for folk to consider that first, because it sort of like dictates and prescribes treatment. Are you with me? I mean, making sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
I'd like them to say, listen, oh, we have an 8-year-old child who's coming in for treatment, but guess what? He's 8 years old, but developmentally, he may be 5. And the question is, how can a person know that? Well, when I'm treating a client, after the first session, I can tell whether or not that child is on task for developmentally as an 8-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
or, he's acting or she's acting as a 4-year-old based upon behaviors. Let me just give you a little tidbit, for instance, Jackie. If I get an 8-year-old who's having tantrums, what's the first thing you're going to say?
Out of control.
8-year-olds don't have tantrums.
Right.
That's a young behavior.
Got you.
And the reason 3-year-olds have tantrums is because they cannot communicate what they feel.
Well, Dr. Miles, I'm going to say this.
Mm-hmm.
You just said that as a statement of fact. I don't know that all parents know that.
They don't know it.
I feel like we really expect a lot of younger behaviors all the way through the early teens. I mean, we have 10 and 11-year-olds throwing tantrums. And I think a lot of parents don't know that, guess what? At this age, that should not be happening. Or they don't know that it happens or should happen when a child doesn't have other communication strategies.
Jackie, see, you're talking about parents. I wasn't talking about parents. I was talking about clinicians.
Okay. Well, guess what? I think you also just came up with a topic for your summit, and that is the factors of diagnosis, you know, an analysis of characteristics and things that should be looking for. So I have another question based on what you're saying. Have you seen an increase in these diagnoses, or is it, you know, pretty much steady from what it's always been?
Jackie, it is just phenomenal. There is from my perspective, what I'm seeing in clinic is most certainly an increase. Certainly an increase. I'm seeing an increase in all of the common diagnoses with children. Thank you, Ms. McQueen. I know you're seeing it also. There's definitely an increase.
Yes.
And we began to ask the question, Jackie, whether or not some of these are supported by parenting. Are you with me? Styles.
I am.
And or it's all of this stuff, let me just slow down for a second. We say that all of these diagnoses deals with neurotransmitters, okay? Malfunctioning. We understand that. We get that. But the neurotransmitters does their little job or doesn't do their job, but environment plays a part in it also.
Okay.
The increase is, Jackie, we got parents now who are not, you're an educator, who are not parenting. There are no restrictions placed on the child. No restrictions.
Huge.
And they bring them to us, wants to fix them. And I'm saying, maybe fixing starts at home. Huh?
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Parenting. What is parenting?
Well,
Our
the
next
thing,
series.
yeah, the thing about it is that, and these kids come to us, and some of them are really in severe mode. Give you an example. I had a child yesterday who was having a complete meltdown, 8 years old, because someone hacked his roadblock account and sold all of his Robux. And it was 100 Robux. And folk, he had a complete meltdown. Mom's at work. Mom says he's at the daycare. Dr. Miles, I'm scared. I called him, and I was very firm. I called his name. I said, listen, calm down. Do the breathing thing I taught you. 8 years old. Do the breathing. You would think someone had died. And I said, I cannot talk to you if you're crying and screaming. I said, I can't do that. So he finally got him calmed down, because when children are that way, Jackie, they don't see an end. They don't see how they can get out of a situation. And oftentimes parents don't know. He said, not only did they break into my account, this game has knocked me off of it for life. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Wow.
Jackie,
for life. What a term.
Fortunately, my son is home. I said, I need you to help me figure this thing out. I said, this little boy, he messed up for life because he can't get on a game. I then told him, Jackie, I said, if I'm your parent, I'm going to recommend this to her. I said, if you're having this kind of meltdown over a game, my recommendation is that all games be taken away from you. Because I was
just writing that down as a question, Dr. Miles.
Yeah.
Is that an over-connectivity to social and online relationships?
Yeah. Let me finish this little story to share with you what happened. So I finally got him calm, and my son said, yes, this is a company that is publicly traded, so therefore there has to be an appeal process. We found out how to do the appeal process. I texted to his mom. I texted daycare center to let him know that there's an appeal process. Guess what? Calmed down. And so, but the parent had to engage me just to get him calmed. Right. But he said his whole day was messed up, and he's not sure if it would get better.
At 8 years old.
At 8 years old, over a game. And so we're talking about how children behave, and we're talking about, this hyperactivity. We're talking about whether or not it's environmental, and there's no competition. There's no whether or not it is environmental. We already know that it's involving neurotransmitters, but environments can stimulate it.
Okay.
Are you with me?
I am. So this increase in diagnosis, is that good because people are more aware, or is it a result of just generalizing diagnosis?
I am just concerned about the number of children that are coming in to us. Not only the number of children, but the age of the children that are coming, because they're coming to us younger. And, you know, with all clinicians and with all therapists and counselors, we don't want to create an aura of dependency
Right.
on a like a therapist or counselor, and or a dependency on medication. So our total goal is to make sure that the child is able to control behaviors and also have some interventions that he or she can do. Like, for instance, the deep breathing is an excellent one.
Okay.
All right. So to answer your question, and the reason I'm going so slow, Jack, is I just want to make sure that we don't rush through this and that people really get the true essence of this. Because what should happen, they should then know there are some things they can possibly control themselves. But, Jackie, if they have not established proper boundaries with their children, it becomes very difficult. Are you with me?
Yeah, and it sounds like without those boundaries, you're putting a Band-Aid on it, which is not going to cure. It's not a cure. It's just a Band-Aid.
And you may be making it worse.
Okay.
It may be an infected Band-Aid.
Oh, wow.
And so the key is, I think that, you know, and all this, this sort of supports that parents have to know what to do. I know you're going to say, but they don't. And you're absolutely right.
They don't.
They're always looking for, and this is not to be condescending, but that's my responsibility to be supportive of the family, to ensure that there is some normalcy and some peace in the household. And there's an understanding of whatever the child is going through. But think about this. Usually in households, and parents don't like when I say this, that oftentimes the child is mimicking, Jackie, what he sees in the house. Everybody's screaming, everybody running back and forth, nobody's stable. You know, when I say stable, I'm talking about, you know, no one is sitting. Everything is just rush, rush, rush. You know, everything is screaming. Everything is shut up. Are you with me? Yeah.
And, you know, there are a lot of pills that can be difficult to swallow as a parent, but you make a valid point. We have to sometimes sit back and see what our children are processing.
Jackie, you mentioned pills hard to swallow. Don't mention pills in mental health now, because they know pills are hard to swallow. The parents sometimes I give the child medication. No, they say give me the medication. You know? So, but the point is that, and you're going into, we're sort of like segueing into a good area, I think, and that is that, and it's kind of amazing, but parents, ready? Deal with these children, they gotta be willing to follow the rules themselves.
Tough one, another tough pill, and you know this.
Yeah, because
it is.
I'll tell you what happened with the diagnoses, and for those who just logged on, I mentioned that, you know, hyperactivity usually has a partner. It's going to usually be ADHD, like a focus, and a whole bunch of other symptoms. So it doesn't travel alone. The problem is that some parents bring children to counseling so we can be the external control. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself managing their household, and no counselor or therapist wants to do that.
Wow.
That's not what they should be doing. That's really going beyond the boundaries that are established for our profession. You with me? Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, gotcha. I thought to be a disconnected or something.
Okay.
All right. Can I talk just briefly? I'm not sure you're getting to it, like some of the symptoms.
Yes, that's exactly where I was headed. If you could talk about some symptoms again to help our parents identify.
You know, and when I say this, folk, we're not talking about a child being a child. We're talking about these things are extreme. Talking out of turn. Now, before I get into that, Jackie.
Go ahead.
Before I get into that, I want to say that all of us probably has a diagnosis that we've not been diagnosed. All of us.
Okay.
And so I don't want to start looking down on this and looking like, oh, we're in trouble because everybody crazy. No, not at all. Not at all. All we're trying to teach you on our live streams is how to deal with stuff. And we want to bring some normalcy to mental health that says, you know, it ain't extreme. It can become extreme. Seek help right away. Seek help right away.
How to get better?
Some of the, you know, the symptoms are talking out of turn. Not only talking out of turn, but talking out of turn and to get angry when you correct them. Like if you say like, hey, let Johnny talk. Oh, you're asking for some trouble then. Blurting things out. and blurting things out. Now think about this as we're talking. Think about the different environments at home, school, social, and in community, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just blurts things out. Another thing, we're talking about impulsivity, hitting other students, just hit folk. And Jackie, you're an educator. I know you've seen this stuff.
Oh,
Just
excessively.
just
Excessively.
hit somebody. Why you hit him? I don't know. I just want to hit him.
And repeatedly. Again, no
Yeah.
no boundaries, impulsive, responding to impulsive whims.
And in school, can't sit in their seats. You just can't sit still. They're gonna have some, of course, with all this activity, they're gonna have some lack of focus. They're not gonna be able to concentrate, difficulty remembering things, which means bad grades. And he or she making bad grades, and you say, you gotta do better. Now, if you don't do better, I'm taking the game from you. So you're just creating all this stress for not understanding what it's really all about. And Jackie, this goes on, and I want our audience to really understand really any diagnosis, that
Mm-hmm.
the symptoms are going to be different based upon diagnosis, but you're going to have also the diagnosis having some coexisting conditions,
Mm-hmm.
like, ready for this one? Learning disabilities.
Which one?
Learning disabilities,
Okay.
conduct disorder, antisocial behavior, fighting, defiant disorder, depression, bipolar disorder, substance abuse. So you all see where this is going.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why we recommend an early diagnosis. Now, the key to all of this is not to think that therapy and the medications are going to solve the problem. Our responsibility is, and I shared this with y'all before, is to stabilize the child so the child can receive cognitive behavioral therapy or whatever therapies that work. Are you with me? Because it's hard to talk to a child getting therapy if he can't sit still.
Right.
So we have to give him medication to get him calmed. Now, I always like to talk about medications, Jackie, because parents see medication as a panacea for good behavior. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
Just, Jackie, when you take medication, if you take medication, doctor's just giving it to you, what do? Don't you take it and you kind of like see how you feel?
Mm-hmm. See how you feel, see if it's helping. Get back to the doctor.
Some of our parents, you dizzy? No, you sleeping? Take it. And they never tell us, that is affecting the child.
Or maybe they're not even asking the child, Dr. Miles.
Well, they should take that pill and go on to school. Let them deal with it.
All the time.
So what I'm saying, parents, is that if the child's lethargic, he's sleeping, the medication should not have that child like he just can't. That means it's too strong for him. Right. Tell the doctor.
And they literally send them to school that way. As you mentioned, yes. As an educator, I have seen children come to school and they're completely knocked out. And somehow there's an expectation that they're going to be taught anything. Well,
the issue with that is that once he leaves the house with I keep referring to he, I'm talking about all genders, so when I say he. Once he or she leaves the house with the medication, it becomes your problem. I just want to get him back home at 2 o'clock and I give him some more drugs then, so I can deal with the rest of the night.
Dr. Miles. I'm laughing, but it's true. It is sad.
Well, that's what happens.
But so very true.
But the child on any medication ought to be able to function, folk. You should not see a drastic change in energy. Now, what you should do is see some energy levels, like he becomes, for lack of better words, modulated, where he's able to have a conversation, eyes still open, and so forth. Okay. But if your child's eyes are droopy and he's about to fall asleep, and you say, oh, he's just on medication. Folk, and Jackie, as adults, we know how it feels to have medication that's wrong for us.
Right.
It's not a good feeling.
Right. Yeah, I've also seen children literally express that this medication doesn't make me feel good. It's making me sleepy, like at school, of course. But yet they're getting it every day. So basically you have parents and professionals medicating a child without monitoring the child.
Well, the key is that they have to monitor not only just for being lethargic or sleepy and all that kind of stuff, right? But there are some medications for ADHD and hyperactivity, that causes severe weight gain. And so I tell parents, see if your child's developing weight, at a rate that you've not seen it. So I have a client.
So know the side effects.
I have a client who actually gained 50 pounds in 2 months. Now, he already had a self-esteem issue. So you know that he now has a severe self-esteem issue. And that's why I say, parents, when you get these medications, go online, read what the side effects are, and control the situation and tell your doctor it's causing him to gain weight. It's not because he's eating. And you have to be persistent. Because many of the clinics, Jackie, these parents go to our clinics and they feel so helpless. Okay, y'all the experts, whatever y'all say, I'm going with that.
Don't
Oh,
question it. Right.
you gain a lot of weight. Just stop eating. Go on a diet. When it's the medication, that's causing it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it really is irresponsible parenting, unintentional, of course, but that is it. And you know, Dr. Miles, we always end up saying this: intentional parenting. You know, parenting on purpose, and that's what we're talking about with hyperactivity.
I want to share this before you go further. And we're learning also, folks. We're not trying to mean you, saying you don't know how to parent. And so if our word choices imply that is not our intent. Our intent is really to help you learn more ways of parenting.
And because you can only parent certain conditions and diagnosis, right?
You can only parent what you know. You can only put out what you know. Right. So I'm saying when you have children who have diagnosis, especially when taking the time to take them to a therapist, to be assessed, that you need to watch the outcome. Watch the outcome. All right?
Yes. So with that, it led us right to what we were talking about, which is the various medications, and it seems to be quite a few.
Yeah, Jackie, one thing I don't want to do, because I don't pretend to be this person who knows all medications, because I'm not an MD, but there are some basic medications that we treat hyperactivity and we treat attention deficit for. And parents who have these children, and can I just slow down for 1 second? Children who are in foster care, Jackie, you're going to see this more often than anywhere else. We just said it comes from, it's more enhanced in families that speak English only. And we also said it's more enhanced for low SES, low socioeconomic. I'm not implying that all kids in foster care are low SES. I'm not saying that. But my point is, when you get a foster child who has, ADHD, conduct disorder, bipolar, a whole bunch of other stuff, folks, don't just say, oh, I can take care of it. Just your medication, I got it.
Right. And of course, a lot of those things can be related to, the fact that the child is in foster care.
Most certainly.
And the environments. And
what happened to him or her before they even got there. Okay. But you know that Focalin is and there is of course, a non-generic term for it, but Focalin usually treats ADHD and it helps children focus. You also have Adderall. Many parents are very familiar with that. That's a very common medication. And Adderall with some children is what causes, I think, the weight gain. I have that right, I think. Yeah, I think it's Adderall. And they got dexatrin. Then you have, we talked about Vyvanse last week, and Ritalin. And Ritalin is another common one that is prescribed for children. But Jackie, when the medication is prescribed, it is very important the caregiver observe that child and keep in constant communications with the doctor. And I don't mean you have to call a doctor and nag them. I'm simply saying every doctor has an assistant. Every doctor has a clinical director. You simply email them and say, listen, Johnny is sleeping all day long. I mean, that medication is too strong. Bring it down a couple of notches. Or I don't see any changes in his behavior. You take it up a couple of notches.
Right. Faithful Father just posted a very good point. We follow all the directions when it comes to our medication. We want to make sure that we're not over-medicating ourselves, under-medicating ourselves, but perhaps we're not always giving our children that same advantage.
But I don't understand. Well, let me stop acting like I don't understand, because I do understand. But I just think it's kind of interesting how we as adults can do it for ourselves, but the kids who we love, we don't watch it. We just say, doctor said it, let's do it.
Well, Dr. Miles, and just off for a second, I really do think that sometimes as parents, we think it's an autopilot.
Yeah.
And all we have to do is the roof, the food, clothes, school, and the rest is autopilot. So it does take an investment of time.
Well, I think also you can start thinking it's autopilot if you so choose. But I'm looking at the child's future behavior. Where's it going to land him or her? You know what I'm saying? Where's it
Yes.
going to land them? I mean, is it going to land them using substances like even stronger medications, like not medication, but stronger drugs like weed and all that kind of stuff? Is it going to land them become dependent upon a medication for the rest of their life when really it should not? It
Right.
should not.
Should
With
help them
proper,
transition.
yeah,
Right.
with proper treatment and medication, we should be
And
able to
strategies.
handle some of this stuff.
Okay. Now, thinking about medication, we also have to address whether or not these can become habit forming. Again, it's something that we think about in adult medication, but are we addressing that for children?
Almost certainly, they all can become habit forming. You know, what I find interesting is that some parents allow their children to manage their medication themselves.
Wow.
And they find out that many times the child's not even taking the medication for 2 weeks. I'll give you an example. Have a child who did not have medication, and he became very talkative. He just talked. He talked. I let him talk for a session for 45 minutes nonstop.
Wow.
I knew then. I asked. I said, "Have you had your medication? Is anything wrong with me?" I said, "No, no, no." I enjoy hearing you talk. I said, "But have you had your medication?" The answer is no. Well, last time you had it a week ago. I got the parent. I said, "Listen." I said, "How do you think I knew he didn't have medication?" They said, "I don't know," because he was talking excessively. He talked for 45 minutes, went from topic to topic to topic to topic for 45. And if I had not stopped him, I'd have been in a session with him for 2 hours.
Mm,
And he still would not have stopped.
right.
Okay, okay. Were you aware he didn't have the medication? No, I told him to take it. I'm talking about now young children, like 8, 9-year-olds.
Wow. Wow. Yep. Okay. So very important for our listeners and people to know in general. And I am hoping that our audience is sharing this with their coworkers, with their friends and family and other people who parent. These medications may be habit forming if used incorrectly. So we want to be very careful about that.
I do want to share this with you, and this is just a reality, Jackie. If there are some parents who have substance issues, sometimes the parents should get the child's medication and take it for themselves.
Oh my. Okay. That sounds like another session.
Yeah.
You know, this is important, and I'm not sure if parents know. The different ways to test hormone levels in a child. How is that done?
Well, Jackie, we don't. I'll share with you in many practices, when it comes to these diagnoses, when it comes to ADHD or or hyperactivity, we don't do blood tests. We don't.
Okay.
We do observation. And we do case histories of the child. You know, what has it been like in the last 7 days? What has it been like in the last 2 months? It's kind of interesting. A lot of these, and y'all just pray for me. Please understand that I'm not downing my profession. But Jackie, I mentioned this before, just like in any profession, there's some good clinicians and there's some not so good.
Right.
I always have issue with a client who's receiving services for a year and has not gotten better.
Well, yes, that makes sense.
We ought to be seeing some changes in some of our children's behaviors, 3 months, 6 months. That's why they get authorizations for further units to,
Right.
so we can see them. But when you have children who's been in care, who's been receiving services, therapeutic, especially, cognitive behavioral therapy for like 2 years. And I'm saying,
And nothing's changed.
Yeah, well, something should have changed, because if it ain't working, change your methodology.
Right.
Or I tell parents, just like you do anything else, Jackie, if you don't see some changes, maybe your therapist needs some more training on somebody else. Or you need a new clinic to go to.
Right. And Dr. Miles, I think here is where sometimes the behaviors are seen as personalities.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's not an expectation that they'll change.
Exactly.
Right. Because you feel this is a child's personality. It's who they are. It's how they behave, not recognizing it is a condition that can be managed.
And the thing about it is that you can tell when it's a condition that needs some assistance, because it becomes extreme.
Okay.
It becomes extreme. The child can't sit. And from the time he gets up, he's running back and forth talking. That's not, but one thing I share with parents, not only are you frustrated, but the child tired too. So
Right.
what happens is that when he goes to bed, Jackie, two things happens. He either goes to sleep right away because he's exhausted from all this activity, or he does not go to sleep because his brain is still active.
Still going.
Still going.
Okay.
All right.
On that note, I think a perfect segue. What are some ways to calm your child?
I gave you a little of it throughout this thing. I said, one, with medication, parents follow the rules on the medication. Don't say, well, I'm going to give it, the medication says give it to him every morning, each day out of the week. Well, no, I'll give it to him Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and off on weekends. Do you realize you're destroying that child's body because his body keeps trying to adjust? And parents, some of the medication we give children, we prescribe, can cause the child to have heart attacks when you do that. So please don't be trying to adjust medication because you ain't the doctor.
Right.
If you got questions about the medication, seek help from the licensed physician.
Right. It's like getting help and not getting help. If you're not following the instructions, you're not getting your child help.
Be consistent with your parenting. Consistency. If the rule is in bed by 8, it's in bed by 8 every day. If it is the schedule for the day, you know, morning you're up, you're on Zoom or whatever it is, be consistent because you're training the child to form a habit, a positive habit, and you're also regulating his or her day. And children who are hyperactive, their day needs to be regulated.
Okay.
Break up the homework or any activity with something the child likes doing. You know, get him up and tell him to go and walk outside.
Okay.
You know.
So stay there for a minute, Dr. Miles. Do you mean maybe do 30 to 40 minutes of homework and then get up and do something, come back to the homework?
Jackie, it may not even be 30 or 40 minutes because you can do that long, you're pretty good. We're talking about 15 minutes to the most.
Okay.
And
then
according
you
to
want to
age,
give like a 5-minute.
and according to age, it may be 8 minutes.
Okay. Okay. So that's where parents need to do some research, trial and error to figure out, and you know, because the child will be more effective with what you're trying to do. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And I say, for children who have diagnosis, don't be so hard on them like, you better sit there. You better watch that screen. So you tell him to do something he can't do. All right. Parents, when you have children who are hyperactive, ready for this, you're actually forming the behavior. You're showing the child, you're showing the child how to regulate himself or herself.
Okay.
So in doing that, you can't be inconsistent.
Okay.
You with me? Okay. Allow them to fidget. Jackie, you mentioned the widgets, right? I mean, the little spinners, right?
Yeah.
Get them a spinner. And it's so interesting, you know, when you talk about how people learn. Jackie, you're aware that we were trying to do a school once before. It's called accelerated learning school. Yeah. And we know that music helps the brain to operate and function, synapses and so forth.
Yes.
When a child has a, what do you call them? A fidget?
Yes.
The little spinners, the spinners?
Spinners.
As fast as that thing is spinning, is as fast as his brain is spinning. Wow. So it's not a toy. They sold them as toys, but we use them therapeutically.
Yeah. I had heard that they were therapeutic.
Yeah. And we also
you saw children just loving them, and yeah.
We also use the stress balls.
Okay.
And there are other things you can use. Okay. Let your child play before taking on a big task. Get some energy out. Burn some of the
energy. You're gonna have
off.
to stay there for a minute too, because you know that's pretty much the opposite that you hear. Oh no, you're not gonna play until you get this thing done. Like you're not, forget it. Oh, you're not going to football practice for a month until you know.
Well, I say I ain't talking about sending the boy to jail, but I am saying what we should do is, as you're forming the behaviors, is allow them to have some fun, because guess what? All you're doing is causing further frustration, anxiety, and stress, which leads to other advanced things.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I have a personal story with that one, so I know that one firsthand. Okay.
And the last one is let them practice relaxation. Many parents can't do that because they'll never relax.
Do it themselves. I was going to say, let them see you doing it. Let them join you.
Yeah. Sit back. And this is not really new. This is old, called mindfulness.
Oh,
mindfulness.
yeah.
And what does that mean? It simply means to focus on one thing that is pleasant for you, that calms your body, that calms your body. Some folk call it meditation, but there's one that's called mindfulness meditation. There's one that's called mindfulness walks, where you go on walks and you just look at the scenery, you talk about good things, and your brain relaxes. All right. So
It's
there are
about
many.
being present in the moment.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Have heard that one as well. And then, yoga is something that's popular with children.
Yes.
It's something that parents and children can do together. Dr. Miles, if you would talk a little bit about how parental time, spending real engaging quality time with your child might affect hyperactivity.
And it's not about the quantity of the time, it's really about the quality of the time. And the quality talk, we're talking about talking calmly to the child, having and sharing expectations, but also not just screaming when he does something bad, but also complimenting when he does something good. My goodness, I noticed you sat for 15 minutes. Oh my goodness, I can't believe that you finished all your work without getting out that chair. So what happens is the child becomes more mindful of what makes you happy. And then he or she begins to say, oh, I know I could do that because I'm so impulsive, right?
Right.
So it's really training for both the parent and the child. And the reason oftentimes parents can't do it, Jackie, because they don't have the time. They say they don't have the time. Yeah, I don't have time to be playing these kind of games with him. I ain't got time to be talking about sitting down because I'm trying to cook dinner. While I'm sitting down, who's gonna cook dinner? And I understand their pain, but at the end of the day, you're the parent.
Right.
I mean, they can help you in the kitchen.
Which is a great way to spend quality time together. Some of the things you mentioned also made me think, sometimes parents become negative about the diagnosis.
Right.
They see it as a horrible thing. Oh, my child this, oh, my child that. Is this something that they should be negative about?
Well, okay. When you get a sore throat, if your husband or boyfriend or whatever says, you just lying, you pretending, there ain't nothing wrong with you. How do you feel?
Right. Right.
I mean, but the whole point, Jack, I just think that people have forgotten that children are children, and they're depending upon us for their existence. And when they can't depend upon the parents for existence, who else can they depend upon? And children who have diagnosis are really dependent upon parents to validate them. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
And to correct them and to nurture them, and because they know they're different. And what's so interesting, ready for this one? The kids know they're different because they know the other kids don't act that way.
Right.
And Jackie, then they began to isolate. Jackie. They said, listen, I know I'm different. I said, what do you mean? We're talking about an 8-year-old now, because other kids are able to sit and I'm not, and I know I can't. Just so they begin to self-degrade and just begin to insult oneself, and that deals with self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just very concerned about. Okay, as a parent, okay, I'm informed, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
informed, and I'm sure many of our listeners are informed, but we have many parents who are not informed. That means
Right.
they don't ever show any empathy for the child. They don't embrace the child and saying, listen, whatever people are saying about you, I love you.
Right.
That you're great. You're the best thing that I ever had. It's those kind of things.
Right.
But the child knows, Jackie, that he or she is different. They know that.
Right. So I wrote down two things, and I know our time is getting short. One, it happens all the time, Dr. Miles. Parents talk around the children about these things. And
Yeah.
as you pointed out, the child goes, hey, I'm different. I have a condition. Talk to us for a second about whether or not we should be sharing certain labels and terminology with these students, with these children.
That's a very good question you ask, because I tell the children that I serve that don't be telling nobody you got no therapist because they think you're crazy, right? First of all, you ain't got to tell them nothing. You can call me coach. You can call me mentor. I don't care what you call me. And sometimes parents think it's just y'all just work with me. Sometimes parents think it's kind of like cute that my child has a therapist. They think it means status.
True.
And the child is saying, wait a minute, why are you telling people I got a therapist?
Hello.
Oh, he on with his therapist right now. You know, I said, parents,
Telling all
please,
their business.
don't do that. Don't do that. Because the child starts thinking that something is wrong with him. Now, what's very interesting, what I found, Jackie, and this is a wonderful part of the story, is that children who really receive the help and understand it, they say, Dr. Miles, I got a friend who need you.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
Yes.
I have a friend who needs you. Can I tell his mom about you? Of course, the answer is yes.
But again, to your point, the child knows and is recognizing behaviors not just in themselves but in their friends.
But one thing I want to warn the parents of: don't allow your therapist or the counselor. Okay, well, let me rephrase that. Don't allow the child to like the counselor and therapist more than like you.
That's another session, Dr. Miles. That's a good point.
The reason the child attracts to the therapist is because we listen, we talk to him,
on a regular basis.
We encourage him, and so in us they find relief. But that's not our responsibility now. It is yours to do that. And I want to say this, Jackie, that it's so important that if your child's seeing a therapist, your therapist ought to be having at least one family meeting, one a month.
Okay.
Don't let anyone treat your child and the therapist ain't never talking to you.
Doesn't even make sense, does it?
Does not make sense.
And so then Dr. Miles is kind of one of our culminating thoughts that I think can be overlooked. Sometimes we forget that childhood is formative, right? Can you talk about that? It's formative.
Well, Jackie, I understand what you're saying. And I for me, what it means is that it is active and they're constantly in a state of learning. I want to throw it back to you. What do you think that means?
Pretty much what you just said, that your child is being formed. Don't think that they are set. Don't think that what happens, the environment, the stimuli are not affecting the formative development. Childhood is formative. Things build on each other, and the parent plays a major role in that.
Well, I'm going to add to that because I think you hit something that I like talking about, is that children are nothing but building blocks. You're building them, and what'll come out is exactly what you put in.
Right.
If you're cussing a lot, definitely going to come out. If you're mean to them, guess what? The child tells the therapist, my mom is mean to me. One kid told me, I think my mom doesn't like me because I look like my dad. And they're not together anymore. I'm saying, like, now he's 9 years old.
Where did he get that?
It's the feelings. It is when you see a child who's constantly sad, and we talked about this in past meetings, sad affect. I call it flat affect. Flat affect is not showing any emotion at all. Sad affect is that he's always sad. He ain't never got no energy, just always sad. That means that someone has hurt him. That means
and Dr. Miles, to that, I've got to add, parents on the phone, talking to friends, child sitting right there, describing everything. That's where you pick up. It looks like dad. We need to be conscious. That is a living human being next to you. It's not the groceries, and they are listening.
Can I throw this in too? And we are very close to our time. I want to make an announcement at the end. You know that part of the problem is that for single parents who date and they fight with the boyfriend today, they have another boyfriend the next night, they fight with him, the child that is hearing all that. You're creating all this fear, all this anxiety, all this fight,
instability,
of flight, and danger.
Yes.
So we just got to watch what we do. Jackie, we're almost out of time. So I mean, I know I've been sharing a lot, and I'm glad you're on with me this week. Folks, I do want to share this again, that we are planning our conference called a summit. It's Children Are Priority Summit. Keep your ears open for that. There is a cost for that. We'll get that out to you. I want to share also that we have one more week of our live streams. One more week. And Jackie, the reason I want to end real soon, because if we don't end soon, our live stream will cut off by itself and I can't publish it. So I
Okay.
want to thank you, Jackie. You
All
were great
right.
at interviewing. And I'm just really thankful to have you on. Hey, all of you all, we'll see you next week. Be good, be blessed, and stay safe, folk. And pray for those folk in Colorado.
Please.
All right? And
Thank
in
you.
Atlanta.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Jackie, take care. You were great.
Good night, Dr. Miles. You as well.
See
Be
you.
with you.